You are watching Macro TV, and in this session, we are going to continue to work on the Solow model, which is in study unit 4 and chapter 8 of Berger. In our previous video, we had a look at what are some of the determinants of economic growth, and we said that they are the amount of labor you have, the amount of capital you have, as well as human capital, so skills of your labor, and productivity, how efficient the country is at producing. And so you can see all of that still in our production function, where income or production is a function of labor capital, human capital, and productivity. For now, in order to simplify our analysis, we are going to remove human capital from this equation, and we can add it later on. So for purposes of this simplified version of the Solow model, income is a function of labor, capital, and technology. So here are some of the assumptions that we make within the Solow growth model. The assumptions of any model are always very important. They are what makes the model function, but they are also oftentimes some of the weak points of a model. And if you can disprove that prove that the assumptions are not true, then it is easier to prove that the model is not accurate. But you can decide for yourself as soon as we go through these assumptions what you think the value of the model is. So the first assumption that we make is diminishing marginal returns to labor and to capital. So this is the idea that if you increase the amount of capital continually, you will over time have less and less output that you're getting for the capital you put in, and the same for labor. The more labor you have and the more you increase your labor, the less you're going to get out, returns you're going to have for increasing that labor. And it's for this reason that your total production curve has a diminished slope. We'll look at that curve soon. The second assumption that we're making is that there's non-diminishing marginal returns to productivity. So if you increase your productivity, you will either have a proportional increase in output or even more than that. For this study unit and for this textbook that we're using, we are going to simplify it and assume that there's constant returns to productivity. And what this basically means is if you increase your productivity by 10%, your output is also going to increase by 10%. This assumption is not a necessary assumption. If we drop that or this simplification of this assumption is not necessary, we could also say that there is increasing marginal returns to productivity, in which case if you have a 10% increase in productivity, you'll have more than a 10% increase in output. We are just simplifying it, but regardless of whether we assume constant or increasing marginal returns, our analysis will still hold. So just to simplify it, we're going to assume constant returns to productivity. And when technology then shifts or changes, increases, you will see a complete shift of your total production curve, and not a move along the curve. This technology doesn't determine the slope of the TP curve, rather it determines a shift of the TP curve. Here's an example of our total production curve, and we're going to illustrate to you now how increasing labor would have diminishing marginal returns. So if we increase labor from N0 to N1, you can see that increase in income from Y0 to Y1. If we increase labor again at roughly the same amount, you can see a smaller change now from Y1 to Y2. If we were to increase it again, you would have an even smaller increase in income, and that is the diminishing marginal returns to labor, right? And we could do the exact same thing for capital. All we do is change our x-axis from N, which represents labor, to K, which represents capital. And there you can see the same diminishing marginal returns to capital. So as we increased capital from K1 to K2, there was a smaller increase in output than when we increased from K0 to K1. So that was labor and capital. We also want to know what happens when we change technology. So, or technology, productivity, all of that, right? So if we change our productivity, increased productivity would shift the entire total production curve upward. And it does this because you haven't changed the amount of capital that you're using or the amount of labor necessarily, but you are at the same time having a higher output. So that's why we need to show it through a shift of the total production curve. And as you will notice, the origin point starts at 0, right? So capital, if capital is at 0, output will be at 0. If labor is at 0, output will be at 0. It doesn't matter how productive you are, if you don't have capital or labor to produce, your output will be 0. Right, so that was our total production curve. In this video, we quickly looked at what determines the total production curve, which is the same things that determine long-run growth. And we had a little bit of an analysis of how this TP curve is used to represent the different assumptions within the Solow model. Stay tuned.